They say the Appalachians swallow people, but no one ever talks about what spits them back out. Remember this: some doors are better left unopened, and I only wish I had learned that before it was too late. I'd been hiking alone for days, somewhere between the Virginia border and a stretch of forest my map didn't even name. It was supposed to be a short trail, 2, maybe 3 hours, but I'd lost the path long ago. The deeper I went, the quieter it became. The forest felt ancient, too old for sound. Even the air seemed to hold its breath. By dusk, I realized how completely I was lost. My GPS flickered and died hours ago, the compass needle trembling like it didn't want to settle. I told myself I'd make camp, wait for morning light. But the trees looked the same in every direction, tall and silent, like pillars of some forgotten temple. That's when I saw it, a shape through the branches. At first, I thought it was just another bluff or a pile of stones. Then I saw the outline of a roof, sagging beneath years of moss and rain, a cabin hidden so deep in the forest it shouldn't exist at all. The place looked as if it had been abandoned for half a century. The wood was blackened and swollen from rot, the windows boarded from the inside, the porch sagging under its own weight. Every step I took made the silence heavier. There were no footprints, no paths leading to it. It stood there alone, like it had grown out of the ground instead of being built. I hesitated at the door. The handle was ice cold, but it turned easily. The moment the door creaked open, the smell hit me. Dust, mold, and something older, almost sweet, like wood long dead inside. Everything was still. Furniture coated in inches of gray powder. Cobwebs draped across the ceiling like rotting curtains. The air was thick and unmoving, as if the place hadn't breathed in decades. I walked slowly, each step echoing softly in that hollow quiet. The living room was empty, except for a broken chair and what used to be a table. In the corner, an old stove sat rusted shut, its iron belly dark and cold. On the floor lay a shattered mirror, and for a moment I thought I saw my reflection blink. Even after I'd moved, I forced myself down a narrow hallway. The wallpaper, once pale yellow, had peeled away in curling strips. On the left, a small bedroom. On the right, a closet with nothing inside but a coat eaten through by moths, and at the very end stood a single door. Unlike everything else in that cabin, the door looked new. The wood was smooth and clean, the brass handle shining faintly in the dim light leaking through the cracks. See through the cracks, even the lock looked recent, modern, untouched by time. It didn't belong there. None of it did. I reached out and touched the knob. It was warm. The sound of my own heartbeat filled the room. I turned the handle. Locked. Solid. I knocked once, expecting nothing. The sound that came back was hollow, deep, like striking the wall of a cave. It didn't make sense. The door should have led straight out the back of the cabin. I turned and went outside, circling around to where it ought to be. But there was nothing there, only a wall of old logs, slick with moss, and beyond that, endless trees. No frame, no outline, no mark that a door had ever existed. I pressed my palm against the wood where the door should have been. It was cold at first, then it began to feel alive. A faint vibration pulsing beneath the bark, like something was listening. I stepped back, the forest closing in around me. The air felt heavier now, thick and damp, as if I'd disturbed something that preferred to be left alone. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that the cabin was waiting. That night, I stayed inside. I don't know why. Maybe because the forest outside felt worse than the silence within, I sat in the corner of the main room, my flashlight dimming, my thoughts circling that door at the end of the hall. It was there in the dark, patient and still. And just before I drifted into uneasy sleep, I heard it. A whisper from behind the wood. not words, just the sound of something breathing. I woke to the sound of dripping water. For a moment, I couldn't tell if it was rain or just the house breathing. My flashlight had died during the night, but pale gray light spilled through a crack in the roof. The cabin was colder now, heavier somehow, as if the air had thickened while I slept. The first thing I did was look down the hallway. The door was still there, perfect, untouched, waiting. I should have left. Every part of me knew that. But curiosity has a way of sounding like reason when you're alone. I needed to understand who had built this place, and why one door looked brand new when everything else was dust and ruin. I searched the rooms methodically. Drawers empty, shelves bare. The only sound was the creak of old wood and the whisper of my boots on the floor. In what must have been the bedroom, I found a small nightstand collapsed against the wall. One drawer refused to open until I forced it loose. Splintering the side inside was a notebook. The cover was cracked and stiff, the paper yellowed and spotted with mold. But the handwriting inside was clear, delicate, feminine, and the first line was dated July 17th, 1956.
We were lost for 2 days when we found the cabin. John said it was a good sign, that maybe someone still lived here. I told him it felt wrong. The forest was too quiet, the air too still. But he smiled and said I was being dramatic. Inside, everything was covered in dust. But the strangest part was the door at the end of the hall. It looked new, untouched. John said it must lead outside, maybe to a shed or a cellar. I begged him to leave it alone. He laughed, said doors were made to be opened. That night, we both heard voices, soft ones, like people whispering on the other side. John searched the rooms, but found nothing. He said the sound came from the door. In the morning, the lock was warm. John wouldn't stop talking about it. He said it had to lead somewhere important. I told him my grandmother once said the woods in these mountains have thin places where the world bends. He didn't believe me. We argued. He shouted. Then he went silent. He said he needed a key. Later, while searching, I found something in the old stove. It was wedged deep inside the ashes, an old brass key, half burned, as if someone had tried to melt it. I tried to hide it from him, but he saw. He took it. He said the door was calling. He turned the key. There was a sound, like wind collapsing, like thunder folding in on itself. Then light, too bright to look at. When it faded, John was gone. The door was locked again. I searched the woods for days, calling his name. No footprints, no trace, nothing but silence. Eventually, I came back to the cabin. I thought maybe it would bring him back. I looked in the stove again. The key was there. If he's behind that light, I'll go after him.
The last line trailed off into a blot of ink. The rest of the pages were blank. I stared at the notebook for a long time, the words pulsing in my head. Like a heartbeat, it didn't feel like something written 70 years ago. It felt fresh, recent, as if she'd finished it hours before I arrived. I looked down the hall. The door waited, still and patient. A sound came then, a whisper, faint but clear, seeping through the cracks, a woman's voice. I couldn't make out the words, but she was speaking to me. I felt myself moving before I decided to. Back into the hallway, past the rotting walls, toward the door. Something inside me needed to hear her again. I pressed my ear to the wood. The whisper stopped. Then, 3 slow knocks from the other side. My throat went dry. I stumbled back, my eyes darting toward the old stove in the corner. Something about the journal wouldn't let me ignore it. Hands shaking, I knelt, scraping through the cold ashes with my fingers. Nothing but soot and dust, and then something glinted. I reached in deeper, metal cutting against my skin. When I pulled it out, the brass key was still warm. The key felt heavier than it should have, its weight pulling at my hand like something alive. I turned it over once, the brass cold beneath the dust. The door at the end of the hall waited, silent and perfect, as if the whole house were holding its breath. I walked toward it. Each step made the floor groan under me, like the wood was warning me to stop. The air thickened, pressing on my chest, and when I reached the door, the handle was warm again, almost pulsing. I whispered, "Who's there?" Nothing. Only breathing. Slow, steady. Too close. My hand shook as I slid the key into the lock. It fit so easily, like it had been waiting for me. I turned it. There was no click, just a deep, low sound, like a breath being drawn from somewhere far below the floorboards. Then came the light. It burst through the cracks around the frame, blinding white, spreading across the walls like liquid fire. I stumbled back, covering my eyes, but the light poured through my fingers, burning cold against my skin. The sound grew, a single roar that filled the cabin, 1,000 whispers screaming together. And then, nothing. When I opened my eyes, I was lying on the ground. But it wasn't the cabin floor. It was sand, soft, dry, endless. The air was scorching, heavy with silence, no trees, no sky. Just a blinding white sun above an ocean of dunes stretching forever. I tried to move, but my body wouldn't respond. My mouth was dry, my breath shallow. The last thing I felt was the heat crawling under my skin, and a sharp animal terror that I was not supposed to be here. If this story unsettled you, leave a like and let the shadows know. Subscribe for more tales you shouldn't hear after dark. And if you've seen something you can't explain, tell us in the comments. We're always listening.